fog-shrouded town of Ravenswood, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, an eerie legend whispered through the streets. It was centered around the long-abandoned Marlowe Circus, once a beacon of laughter and wonder, now a decayed relic consumed by ivy and shadow. The legend spoke of the Midnight Clowns, a troupe of performers who vanished mysteriously decades ago. Townsfolk murmured that on nights when the moon was shrouded and the fog lay thick, these spectral clowns would emerge from the ruins, seeking to perform their final show. Enter Thomas, a writer with a penchant for the supernatural, who arrived in Ravenswood to explore this macabre tale. He was drawn to the circus, its rusted gates and collapsed tents like skeletons of a forgotten time. Ignoring the warnings of the locals, he ventured inside as dusk crept over the sky. The circus ground was an orchestra of creaks and groans. Twisted metal and torn canvas lay scattered like fallen soldiers of a great battle. Thomas's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing faded posters of smiling clowns with eyes that seemed to follow him. As night fell, an unsettling silence enveloped the area. The air grew colder, denser. Thomas felt eyes upon him, watching from the shadows. He turned to leave, but stopped. A faint sound reached his ears, the soft, distant melody of a calliope, a carnival tune that chilled the bone. Drawn as if by a siren's call, Thomas followed the music to the main tent, its tattered remains swaying in the wind. Inside, a single spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the center ring. There, he saw them, the Midnight Clowns. Their makeup was cracked and peeling, their costumes tattered and stained. They moved in jerky, unnatural motions, as if unseen strings pulled their limbs. Their eyes were dark voids, and their smiles too wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. The clowns began to perform, their actions grotesque parodies of their former art. Jugglers tossed knives that seemed to slice through the very air, acrobats twisted their bodies in impossible ways, and a clown with a twisted grin approached Thomas, offering a wilting flower that dripped a dark, viscous liquid. Thomas realized he was not a spectator, but part of the show, a captive audience to a performance of madness. He tried to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot, as if the very ground held him prisoner. The clowns encircled him, their laughter a cacophony of discordant notes. It was then that the spotlight flickered and died, plunging the tent into darkness. Thomas felt a breath upon his neck, a whisper that seemed to come from another world. The show must go on. When the light returned, Thomas was alone. The clowns had vanished, leaving no trace of their existence. He stumbled out of the tent, out of the circus, his mind reeling from the nightmare he had experienced. Thomas left Ravenswood the next day, but the memories of that night haunted him. He wrote of the Midnight Clowns, but none believed his tale, dismissing it as fiction. Yet, every time the fog rolled in and the night grew dark, Thomas felt a creeping dread, fearing that the clowns from the Marlowe Circus might one day return to finish their final, ghastly performance.
Now the second story.
In the small, sleepy town of Willow Creek, an air of unease had settled like a thick fog. A series of unexplained disappearances had plagued the town, each occurring on the night of the full moon. The only clue left behind at each scene was a single, blood-red balloon. The townspeople whispered of a dark figure seen on the outskirts of town, always on the nights of the disappearances. Cloaked in shadows, with the faint glint of white and red makeup on its face, it was rumored to be a clown, a twisted remnant of a traveling circus that had passed 3 years ago. Amidst this fear, Sarah, a young journalist, arrived in Willow Creek, determined to uncover the truth. Her investigation led her to the local library, where she delved into old newspaper archives. She discovered a chilling story from decades past about a circus performer known as Smiling Jack, a clown who had mysteriously vanished after a series of tragic accidents at the circus. As the next full moon approached, Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. She decided to stake out the edge of town where the figure had been seen. Armed with her camera and a flashlight, she waited in the darkness. As the moon reached its zenith, a chilling laugh echoed through the night. From the shadows emerged the figure of the clown, its costume tattered and stained, its makeup smeared into a grotesque caricature of a smile. In its hand, it held a balloon, red as blood. Sarah, paralyzed with fear, watched as the clown approached her, its footsteps silent. Its eyes, cold and dead, locked onto hers. It whispered in a voice like the rustling of dead leaves, "Do you want to smile forever?" With every ounce of courage she had, Sarah ran, the clown's haunting laughter following her. She reached the town and sounded the alarm, but when the townspeople returned to the spot where she had seen the clown, there was nothing but a single red balloon floating gently in the night breeze. The disappearances stopped after that night, but the mystery of the killer clown of Willow Creek remained unsolved. Sarah left the town, her nights haunted by the memory of that twisted smile and the chilling offer to smile forever. The legend of Smiling Jack lived on in Willow Creek, a ghost story whispered in hushed tones. Some say he still wanders the outskirts of town, waiting for the next full moon to claim another soul for his eternal audience. And on those nights, if you listen closely, you might just hear the faint echo of sinister laughter carried on the wind.
Now the third story.
In the fading light of dusk, the once vibrant town of Arrowsfield had become a shadow of its former self. The streets were empty, the laughter of children long silenced. A palpable fear hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It began with the arrival of the Cirque de Cauchemar, a mysterious circus that appeared overnight on the outskirts of town. The circus was like none other. Its tents were tattered and faded, adorned with grotesque carvings of grinning faces. The performers were clowns, but not the kind to bring joy. They were sinister, with ghoulish makeup and malevolent eyes that seemed to pierce the soul. Their leader was a figure known only as the Ringmaster, a being whose presence chilled the blood. Strange occurrences began to plague Arrowsfield. People reported seeing the clowns outside their windows at night, their twisted smiles illuminated by the moonlight. Children whispered of nightmares where the clowns would come for them, their laughter echoing in the dark. Then, the disappearances started. One by one, residents vanished, leaving behind rooms filled with nightmarish clown paraphernalia, painted faces on the walls, red noses, and always a single black balloon. Amidst this terror, a group of friends, led by Emily, a brave and determined young woman, decided to uncover the truth. Armed with makeshift weapons and a fierce resolve, they ventured into the heart of the circus under the cloak of night. The inside of the circus was a labyrinth of horrors. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the sound of eerie carnival music floated through the air. The tents were filled with unspeakable sights, figures contorted in agony, their faces frozen in a rictus of fear, painted to resemble clowns. As they delved deeper, they encountered the Ringmaster. His appearance was terrifying, tall and gaunt, with a wide, maniacal grin and eyes that burned with a hellish light. He He spoke of a dark ritual of using the souls of the townspeople to attain eternal life. The clowns, he revealed, were once human, transformed by his twisted magic. A harrowing chase ensued, with Emily and her friends pursued by the demonic clowns through the twisted maze of the circus. They fought with all their might, but the clowns seemed impervious to harm, their laughter a tormenting reminder of their inhumanity. In a final confrontation, Emily faced the ringmaster. In a desperate struggle, she managed to push him into the path of an oncoming carousel. The ringmaster was impaled, his unholy life force extinguished. As he perished, the circus began to crumble, the spell that sustained it broken. The clowns, released from their curse, vanished into the night, their laughter no longer heard. Emily and her friends escaped, the first rays of dawn revealing the ruins of the Cirque de Cauchemar. Arrowsfield was safe, but the scars of that night remained. Whispers persist in the town of Arrowsfield. Some say that on moonless nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the distant sound of carnival music and the faint, sinister laughter of clowns, a chilling reminder of the horror that once visited their town.
Now the fourth story.
In the bleak depths of winter, the isolated town of Frost Hollow was gripped by a paralyzing fear. It began when the Frost Hollow Circus, long a source of joy and wonder, became a harbinger of unspeakable horror. The clowns, once beloved entertainers, had transformed into nightmarish figures, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of evil, their laughter now a bone-chilling echo in the dark. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones of the head clown, Mr. Giggles, a once jovial performer who now wore a blood-stained costume and a smile that never seemed to reach his cold, dead eyes. It was rumored that he had made a sinister pact with dark forces, granting him and his troupe unnatural powers in exchange for the souls of the innocent. One by one, people began disappearing, vanishing without a trace, only their screams piercing the night. No one dared to venture out after sundown, for that was when Mr. Giggles and his twisted entourage roamed the streets, hunting for their next victims. In the heart of this terror was young Anna, whose brother had been one of the first to disappear. Driven by a desperate need to find him, she gathered a group of the bravest souls in Frost Hollow to confront the clowns. Their journey led them to the circus on the outskirts of town, a place now shrouded in an almost palpable darkness. The once vibrant tents stood like tombstones, the air heavy with the stench of decay and the faint sound of a discordant calliope playing in the distance. As they moved through the ghostly carnival, the group was beset by horrors beyond comprehension. Clowns with razor-sharp teeth and eyes as black as the void emerged from the shadows, their movements jerky and unnatural, as if controlled by some malevolent puppeteer. The laughter of the clowns was maddening, a cacophony that clawed at the mind. In the main tent, they found Mr. Giggles, his presence a suffocating evil. He revealed his true form, a monstrous entity, his body a twisted amalgamation of clown and nightmare. The air around him crackled with dark energy, and in his hand, he held a small, beating heart, the source of his power. The battle that ensued was terrifying. Anna and her companions fought with every ounce of their being, but Mr. Giggles was a creature of immense power. Just as all hope seemed lost, Anna managed to snatch the heart from his grasp. With the heart destroyed, Mr. Giggles let out an inhuman scream that shook the very foundations of the circus. He and his demonic troupe disintegrated into ash, their reign of terror coming to an abrupt end. The circus collapsed around them, but Anna and her group narrowly escaped, emerging into the cold light of dawn. Frost Hollow was safe, but the scars of that night would haunt them forever. People still whisper of the horrors that befell Frost Hollow, of the night when the laughter of clowns turned to screams. Some say that on the darkest of nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the distant, haunting melody of the calliope, a chilling reminder of the nightmare that once walked among them.
Now the fifth story.
In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, there lay a secluded village known as Pine Hollow. Enveloped in dense fog and surrounded by foreboding woods, the village was an isolated world of its own, untouched by time. But within this serene isolation lurked a sinister secret, one that began with the arrival of a mysterious circus troupe known ominously as the Carnival of Shadows. The circus, an eclectic collection of tents and performers, appeared on the outskirts of Pine Hollow without warning. Its arrival was accompanied by a series of strange occurrences, animals behaving erratically, bizarre weather patterns, and an unsettling feeling that something was terribly amiss. At the heart of this circus was a group of clowns, each more grotesque and terrifying than the last. Their ringleader was a figure known only as the Pale Jester, a being whose very presence exuded an aura of malevolence. Clad in tattered robes, his face was a ghastly visage, painted with a macabre blend of white and red, his smile a permanent, chilling grin. As the days passed, a palpable sense of dread settled over Pine Hollow. The clowns began to appear throughout the village, their actions strange and menacing. They would stand in the shadows, watching, always watching, with their unnerving smiles and soulless eyes. Then, the disappearances began. One by one, villagers vanished into the night, leaving behind rooms filled with bizarre symbols painted in red and the faint, lingering scent of carnival sweets. Whispers of a curse spread like wildfire, a curse brought by the clowns and their unholy master, the Pale Jester. In the midst of this growing terror was Eliza, a young woman whose brother had fallen victim to the clown's malevolence. Driven by a fierce determination to save her brother and her village, Eliza gathered a group of brave souls, each touched by the horror that had befallen Pine Hollow. Their quest led them deep into the heart of the circus. Under the cover of night, they navigated a maze of twisted tents and bizarre sideshows, each more disturbing than the last. The air was thick with the smell of decay and the sound of eerie, off-key carnival music. In the central tent, they found the Pale Jester, seated upon a throne of bones, his court of demonic clowns arrayed around him. He spoke in a voice that was a symphony of nightmares, revealing his true intent to harvest the souls of the villagers to fuel his dark magic. A terrifying battle ensued. The Pale Jester's powers were immense, the air crackling with eldritch energy as he summoned twisted creatures from the depths of the circus. Eliza and her companions fought valiantly, but they were no match for the Jester's otherworldly might. In a moment of desperation, Eliza discovered the source of the Pale Jester's power, a dark crystal pulsating with an unholy light. Risking everything, she lunged for the crystal, shattering it with a deafening scream. The effects were immediate and catastrophic. The Pale Jester let out an inhuman wail as his form began to crumble, his clowns disintegrating into shadows. The circus itself started to collapse, the fabric of reality tearing apart. Eliza and her group barely escaped as the circus imploded, vanishing into the ether. They emerged into the breaking dawn, the nightmare seemingly over. However, the peace was short-lived. Strange occurrences still haunt the edges of Pine Hollow, and on moonless nights, a distant, ghostly laughter can be heard echoing from the depths of the forest. The villagers speak in hushed tones of the night when the Carnival of Shadows came to Pine Hollow, a night that will forever be etched in their memories as a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows.